Magic mushrooms' positive effects lasting over a year, say researchers. Scientists at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine claim to have determined the proper dose levels needed to create positive changes in attitudes, mood, life satisfaction, and behavior that persists for more than a year with the psychoactive substance and the so-called magic mushrooms. The findings of the latest in a series of experiments done at Johns Hopkins to investigate psilocybin, a psychedelic substance contained in certain mushrooms. The findings were published online this week in the peer-reviewed journal Psychopharmacology. In cultures before ours, the spiritual guide or healer had to discern how much of what type of mushroom to use for what purposes, because the strength of psychoactive mushrooms varies from species to species and even from specimen to specimen, said Roland Griffiths, PhD, a professor of psychiatry and behavior sciences and neuroscience at the Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine and the study's lead scientist. In our laboratory, we're working with the pure chemical psilocybin, which we can measure out precisely, he added. We wanted to take a methodical look at how its effects change with dosage. We seem to have found levels of the substance and particular conditions for its use that give a high probability of a profound and beneficial experience, a low enough probability of psychological struggle, and a very little risk of any actual harm. Similar. First therapeutic study of LSD in 35 years finishes treatment of last subject. The researchers said 94% of the study's 18 participants rated their experiences with psilocybin as among the top 5 most, or as the top most spiritually significant experience of his or her life at a 14-month follow-up. So researchers said 94% of the study's 18 participants rated their experiences with psilocybin as among the top 5 most, or as the top most spiritually significant experience of his or her life at a 14-month follow-up. 84% also reported positive changes in their behaviors, changes like improved relationships with family and others, increased physical and psychological self-care, and increased devotion to spiritual practice, which were corroborated by family members and others. I feel that I relate better in my marriage, one participant reported. There is more empathy, a greater understanding of people and understanding their difficulties and less judgment. The participants ages 29 to 62 were screened to include only those who were deemed psychologically and physically healthy. Each participant received 5 closely monitored 8-hour psilocybin sessions a month apart. Each session had a different dose of psilocybin, with one session using a placebo, and was blind, meaning neither the participants, the monitors, nor the scientists knew how much psilocybin, if any, had been given during any session. At higher doses of psilocybin, nearly a third of the participants experienced great fear or had delusions. But with gentle guidance from researchers, those reactions did not outlast the psilocybin session or harm the participants. Those who received lower doses of psychedelic before the higher doses were the most likely to have long-lasting positive changes in attitudes and behavior. I'm going to read that last sentence again. Those who received lower doses of the psychedelic before the higher doses were the most likely to have long-lasting positive changes in attitudes and behavior. Potential psychotherapeutic value of magic mushrooms. The Hopkins psilocybin studies clearly demonstrate that this route to the mystical is not to be walked alone. Jerome Jaffe, MD, who served as the first White House drug czar, commented. But they have also demonstrated significant and lasting benefits. That raises 2 questions. Could psilocybin occasioned experiences prove therapeutically useful, for example, in dealing with the psychological distress experienced by some terminal patients? And should properly informed citizens not in distress be allowed to receive psilocybin for its possible spiritual benefits, as we now allow them to pursue other possibly risky activities such as cosmetic surgery and mountain climbing? A similar study published in the Archives of General Psychiatry in January found psilocybin can safely improve the moods of patients with advanced stage cancer and anxiety. The study was headed by Dr. Charles S. Grob, a professor of psychiatry at the Los Angeles Biomedical Research Institute at Harbor-UCLA Medical Center, and found a significant improvement of mood and reduction in symptoms of anxiety up to 6 months after receiving psilocybin-assisted therapy. We are working with a patient population that often does not respond well to conventional treatments, said Grob. Following their treatments with psilocybin, the patients and their families reported benefits from the use of this hallucinogen and reducing their anxiety. The study shows psilocybin can be administered safely, and that further investigation of hallucinogens should be pursued to determine their potential benefits. Although some may be concerned that a relatively unstudied and illegal substance such as psilocybin could pose health risks, a study published in the Psychopharmacology in 2004 found there is no cause for concern that psilocybin is hazardous with respect to somatic health in healthy adults. The only psychological side effects the study found was a brief increase in blood pressure and a small increase in levels of thyroid-stimulating hormone, TSH, prolactin, cortisol, and adrenocorticotropic hormone. None of these side effects were considered dangerous to healthy adults. Typically, the experiences after medium and high doses of psilocybin were rated positive, with retrospective statements ranging from pleasurable to ineffably beautiful, according to the study. One volunteer had a fearful experience after being given a high dose of psilocybin, but his anxiety was resolved without the need for pharmacological intervention. We know that psilocybin is remarkably non-toxic to the body's organ systems. Matthew Johnson, PhD, and assistant professor of psychiatry and behavioral sciences at Johns Hopkins and lead author of an earlier Hopkins paper on hallucinogens, safety remarked. But there are indirect risks. If someone experiences high anxiety, fear, or paranoia during a psilocybin session, it's not hard to imagine them behaving in ways harmful to themselves or others. These risks appear to be minimized when volunteers develop a trusting relationship with a skilled monitor who remains present with them for the duration of the substance's primary effects, and who is available afterwards for consultation. This article was written by Eric W. Dolan, who has served as an editor for Raw Story since August 2010 and is based out of San Diego, California. He grew up in the suburbs of Chicago and received a Bachelor of Science from Bradley University. Eric is also the publisher and editor of SciPost. You can follow him on Twitter at EW Dolan. That's D-O-L-A-N. EWDOLAN. This can be found in the Raw Story. Article date Wednesday, June 15th, 2011.